Alright, so I'm a little bit behind in terms of this upload, but I finally got another black and white OU battle. This time it's against Speed Boost from the Smogon forums. A lot of times Smogon is going to be a pretty good place to ask for battles because most of the players are pretty good in terms of skill level, and although the teams aren't always the best, they're at least competitively viable for the most part. I'm going to lead off with Heatran in this match. He's going with a Darmanitan. Usually a Darmanitan is going to be choiced, almost always Scarfed. If not, then it's going to be Banded. Occasionally it'll also be Life Orbed as well, but that'll be really obvious from the recoil damage. So I'm going to switch into Skarmory to take either the Superpower or the U-turn. Either he's going to go for Superpower, trying to hit Heatran right away, or he's going to go into U-turn, which I think is actually going to be the smarter move, because then he could break my Air Balloon and also scout whatever my switch-in is, because pretty clear that I'm going to switch for anybody who's familiar with Darmanitan's moveset. So I am going to get up Spikes on the switch. Definitely looks like he's going to be choiced, by the way, so I don't really have anything to fear, especially with that attack drop from Superpower. He's going to switch into his Hydreigon, and I'm definitely predicting a fire move here, either going to be Fire Blast or a Flamethrower, so I'm going to switch to Tyranitar, which should be able to take that. I'm running max special bulk on this Tyranitar, which is really good in Sandstorm, because it means I should be able to take the majority of his attacks. He is going to be a Life Orb Hydreigon though, which means he's going to go for a Focus Blast second turn, but I'm also carrying a Chople Berry just for taking fighting attacks like this. And I should be able to survive that Focus Blast pretty well and KO back with Superpower. This isn't the most common move on Tyranitar because a lot of people just like to run a full mix set, but I'm actually going purely physical on this Tyranitar. It also opens up some advantages like letting me run a Careful Nature instead of Sassy, so that's going to let me outspeed other Tyranitar and hit him with Superpower before they set up Stealth Rock or anything like that. He's going to go into his Darmanitan again, and since I've already gotten rid of his Hydreigon, I actually don't need Tyranitar for anything else on his team. So I'm actually just going to sack it at this point. I could go to Skarmory because he's probably going to go for U-turn or Superpower again, but just in case he makes a smart prediction and goes for a Flare Blitz trying to hit my Skarmory because it's my main switch into Darmanitan's U-turn or Superpower, then that's going to be pretty bad for me because of how useful Skarmory is against his team. So I just decided to go for the safe option and sack Tyranitar there because I really don't need it at that point. So I'm going to switch into Latias when he's locked into Superpower. That's going to cause him to go to Ferrothorn, and I'm going to predict that and double switch to Heatran. This is going to be pretty good because I'm going to be able to scare him out with the threat of a Fire-type move and hopefully set up Stealth Rock on the predicted switch. So I am going to go for that right now as he goes to his Roserade. Not really sure why exactly he decided to send in Roserade, but I guess maybe he was predicting the Stealth Rock. Not really sure though. He does seem to not be running Leftovers though, so I guess this is definitely going to have Sleep Powder. Going to be a more offensive set with Toxic Spikes. Looking pretty good in terms of entry hazards though, because I've got up Stealth Rock and one layer of Spikes, so that's definitely going to pressure him as far as switching goes. Predicting the Sleep Powder, so I'm just going to go into Celebi with Natural Cure. I don't really have that good of a switch in into Sleep Powder on this team, so usually I just go to Celebi as kind of like a pivot, so I just decided to stay in this turn because a lot of smart players will actually predict the switch and go for Sleep Powder as you switch out with Natural Cure, but he actually stays in and goes for Sludge Bomb. That was really unexpected too because Sludge Bomb isn't really that viable in OU with all the Steel types around. I was predicting either Toxic Spikes or a Hidden Power Fire. Both of those would definitely have been a lot easier for Celebi to handle. So I'm going to switch to Excadrill on this turn as he goes for a Sludge Bomb again. And I do switch in on the immunity, which is going to be pretty good because it means that Excadrill doesn't take any damage and I still retain my Air Balloon. So I'm just going to outspeed him and go for the Earthquake now. And even unboosted, Adamant Earthquake is going to do a lot of damage. Definitely going to be enough to finish off his Roserade, which is really good. He's going to go into his Rotom now. Not really much I can do against this, especially since I haven't gotten up a Swords Dance yet. And I don't want to switch into Celebi because I might be able to get up a Recover on a free turn later so I can get it back to pretty good health. So I'm going to switch into Latias, which is another really good Rotom Wash counter. But he actually just goes for the Trick and I get Specs. Really not too bad too because if I get past his Ferrothorn, I'll be able to spam some Dragon Pulses and that'll do a lot of damage. Latias is really underrated in this metagame, by the way. Works really well in bulky offense, and it's only around 5.4% usage, so definitely not really getting that much usage in general. So he is going to go into his Ferrothorn. Just went for the obvious Dragon Pulse this turn because I've already made some pretty aggressive predictions so far, so I just decided to mix it up a little bit. I'm going to go into my Heatran though as he goes for a Gyro Ball, and this isn't really going to be too bad. He does break my Air Balloon, but it's not really bad at all for me because he doesn't really have any ground-type moves to hit Heatran with on the rest of his team. He is going to get a crit, which doesn't really matter at all considering I have a quad resistance anyway, so I am going to be able to scare him out with the threat of a fire attack. Predicting the Rotom Wash to switch in, so I'm going to go into Celebi on another double switch, and he does go into the Rotom, so I do predict that correctly. And I am running some extra speed on this Celebi, should be able to outspeed every common Rotom set. but he actually turns out to be running a timid max speed set, so that's actually going to manage to finish off my Celebi with HP Fire the next turn. Kind of unfortunate because I was hoping I could just recover off the damage and hopefully just use Giga Drain later to take out his Rotom. Also going to have HP Fire to handle his Ferrothorn as well. Celebi would have been pretty useful in this match, but kind of unfortunate because he does outspeed me for the reasons I mentioned earlier. But now that he's gotten rid of my Celebi, Latias is still going to be a pretty good switch in into his Rotom Wash. I'm actually going to predict the Ferrothorn to come in this time. He doesn't really have anything else to switch in directly into a Dragon Pulse, so I'm just going to go for a Roar this turn. So he does go into his Ferrothorn. That's going to turn out pretty well for me because I do have Stealth Rock and one layer of Spikes up already. So it's definitely going to rack up some entry hazard damage here. He's actually going to go out into his Toxicroak. It doesn't seem to have leftovers. I'm predicting that this is probably going to be a Life Orb set, and those usually carry Ice Punch, so I'm going to just go to Skarmory. Don't really have anything to fear from a Sucker Punch considering I was locked into Roar. Don't know if he just made a careless move there or he forgot that I was locked into Roar because of the specs he tricked me earlier, because he just goes for that Sucker Punch, which wouldn't really have done anything anyway, even if I decided to stay in. Not really sure if he does have Ice Punch, but Skarmory would have been the best overall switch in anyway. I'm going to predict the switch and go for a Whirlwind just to rack up some more entry hazard damage. He's actually going to go back into Toxicroak. This time though, instead of Whirlwinding again, I'm just going to finish off his Toxicroak with Brave Bird. Put shortly, the human brain is designed for pattern recognition, and when you mess up that pattern, you can really screw with your opponent's mind sometimes. I mean, that's probably overthinking it, but it's kind of the mindset that I have when playing competitive Pokemon most of the time. So I am going to get off that Brave Bird, and it's going to finish off his Toxicroak. Going to be really good because that's pretty much the biggest physical threat on his team. And Skarmory's at really low health right now, but since I've gotten rid of his Toxicroak, it's not really going to be as useful as it was before, so I'm going to be able to use it as death fodder for later. He's going to go into his Rotom, and I'm just going to switch back out into Latias to wall it. He actually is going to go for an HP Fire on the switch. Not really sure if he was just predicting or anything. Really, his Electric Stab would have been a better idea because HP Fire doesn't really hit anything on my team harder. So I do manage to take that really well, and I'm just going to go for the safe Dragon Pulse this turn just to finish off his Rotom. He ends up over-predicting and thinking I'm going to go for a Roar again, trying to roar out his Ferrothorn. So I do get rid of his Rotom. That's going to be really good for me. I've been wanting to get it out of the picture since he killed off my Celebi. So he's going to go into his Darmanitan, and this is definitely going to go for a Scarf U-turn. Going to do a lot of damage to Latias, so I'm just going to switch into Skarmory this turn. He's down to his last two Pokemon though, Ferrothorn and Darmanitan. And since I've already gotten up hazards, and Darmanitan especially is super weak to those, I don't really have much to fear, especially when I have something like Excadrill to finish off both of his remaining Pokemon. So he is going to go into his Ferrothorn as I switch into Skarmory. And not really much I can do to him with my Skarmory, but basically I'm just going to Whirlwind him around a bit until he goes into his Darmanitan. Then pretty much just sacrifice Skarmory as death fodder and send in my Excadrill to sweep up the rest of his team. He's just going to go for a Gyro Ball for some reason. Not really sure why he didn't go for a Leech Seed instead, unless he doesn't have it. So he is going to go into his Darmanitan as I Whirlwind him out. And that actually takes a lot more damage from all the entry hazards than I thought. So I'm just going to sacrifice Skarmory at this point. He's probably going to be forced to go for Flare Blitz because he only has this last turn to survive. So I'm just going to stay in with Skarmory because really not much else I need to switch into, especially when Skarmory's this low and I can use it as a pretty valuable death fodder anyway. And that is going to kill off his Darmanitan after the recoil damage. He's going to go into his Ferrothorn next, and basically I had the choice between either Excadrill or Heatran. Both are going to be able to KO Ferrothorn by now, so I'm just going to send in Heatran to finish it off 3-0. Made for a pretty nice battle, I think. Going to try to get in another upload on Thursday, so probably going to expect me then. Alright, later.